created the problem. We didn't create the problem, but we discussed the problem, which is that schools are designed to create inequitable outcomes for certain bodies, particularly ethnically and linguistically diverse students. We know that the way instruction happens, discipline policies, and so many other things are set up so that we create dependent learners. So in the Hammond chapter, it talks about rote memorization and lecture being tools that some teachers use that create dependent learning. Because what happens when the lecture is over? How can they think for themselves? And this teacher here, I'm sorry, what's your name again? Jayla brought that to our attention, right? So we're not equipping them to do this independent of us. So what we're going to spend some time talking about now is how can we flip that? What can we do to make sure that we are not complicit in that particular method of instruction? We are not complicit in furthering inequities. And so what I'm going to invite us to do is you'll see a little bit more throughout today and tomorrow. We'll use the term ignite. Hammond refers to this as sparking the brain's curiosity, preparing it to learn new information. So I would like to ignite your brains right now, and I want you to think about this. What is a common assumption that people make about you? Particularly something that's probably not accurate. For people who don't really know you, what's something that they assume about you based on maybe your outward appearance? If there are any grade volunteers, so remember the Vegas rules, especially for this part, confidentiality. Is there any person that'd like to share out for the good of the group something that people assume about you based on outward appearance that might be not necessarily true? Yes, sir. What's your name and what do you teach and where?
My name is DJ, or Mr. Wade, what you guys want to call me. I teach at University Prep Academy, in 10th grade, 10th grade geometry teacher. And one of the things that people assume about me is that I don't go through things. And I think that's the easiest assumption to make for a joyful or happy people, that they don't have problems. And so I think that whole idea of, hey, I'm human too, even though I'm joyful, doesn't mean that I don't go through stuff.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Anybody else? Something that people falsely assume about you. Yes, I know Danielle. She's also a former student.
Good morning, I'm Danielle. I'm going to be teaching 6th grade science at U Prep AP. And something that people assume about me often just seeing me is that I'm young or immature. And I am young, but I'm not like a teenager. So people see me and like want to like fun. And it's like, okay, I'm actually a college educated teacher. So I actually shape minds for a living, guys. So,
right.
You know, and that makes me feel like, I almost wrote that as my fear actually. So that's something going into the middle school classroom that is kind of fear for me.
Thank you for sharing that, Danielle.
In the back.
Yeah. Give your name, where you teach, and what do you teach?
Ms. Miller, UPSM, science and math, 5th grade. That I'm partner. People feel like since I don't communicate my emotions or I may not be verbal as they would like me to be, I come off standoffish or my partner. Which in reality, I'm just, just kind of awkward. Until I get to know you and I warm up and then I start.
We'll see us do this sometimes here at U Prep when we resonate with something. You'll even see our little kids do it. So that's just me. I hear you, sis. All right, someone else, yes.
Hey everybody, my name is Miss Roots. I'm at UPSM Middle School, South Center. I'm doing 8th grade math. I know that's right. Okay, something that people always like to judge me is because I'm loud, it's like a slang. Everybody think that I'm not like, as smart as them or on their level. But maybe I'm past your level. I grew up in the hood, I chased my dreams, girl. Like, it's there.
All right, maybe one more. Can I get a fella? Yes. You came right in front.
People don't know where I'm from.
So they throw out like all type of countries.
They go around, and they say this and that. They don't know.
And they never get it right.
They never get it right. I give them 3 I'll give everybody 3 guesses.
Okay, got it. Yep, thank you for sharing that. So the reason why this is the Ignite, to kind of spark our brains thinking, is because we're gonna talk about our students. So I'm gonna share, because Hannah talks about like oral storytelling, we're gonna share a group story about how I resonate with this. So as a 9th grade US history teacher, I had a student named Casey, and Casey was tiny. So 9th graders can range in, in size. But Casey was like very, very small, and I assumed that she had cerebral palsy based on like the way she maneuvered throughout the campus, and sometimes she needed like assistance. And so I had one conversation with Casey, and it seemed as if her speech was limited. So I just sat Casey down, I read her IEP, I glanced at her IEP, and I just kind of sat her down and just, if she wanted to talk, I let her talk, but I really did not pay attention to Casey in the way that I should have. Come to find out, Casey actually did not have cerebral palsy. She was in a car accident when she was 5 years old, and it stunted her growth, and she had a number of health challenges. Come to find out, Casey was a slam poet. I assumed that she could not verbally communicate in the way that the rest of the 9th graders could. We did a talent show, Casey got up there and did a whole slam poetry. I assumed that Casey could not do the things that I needed her to do to improve. Come to find out, Casey was like a graphic designer and like a creative person, and she would like do drawings, beautiful drawings for other people. So I assumed about this young child that she could not do certain things just because I thought that she had a disease that she did not have. And I thought that she was not capable of doing the work that she needed to do. She did have an IEP and she did need some modifications, but there were so many brilliant gifts that Casey had that I didn't recognize because I made some assumptions about her without talking to her. So I share that story because I want to ask you to reflect inward now. I need some colleagues to come around and pass out to you. Some of you may have done this before in your teacher prep program or at some other point in your life. But again, Vegas rules, we're going to ask you to reflect inward because your identity and the things about you impact the way that you show up to the students and the way the students view you. So I'm going to ask you to think about the multiplicities of identities that you operate within. And you're going to complete a social identity wheel. So think of yourself as a multidimensional person. And in the center of this identity wheel, there are 4 statements. So I want you to think about, amongst the ones that are given, which identity or identities do you think about the most often? Okay? Your race, your ethnicity, which is different from race. Race is socially constructed. Ethnicity is the way we're raised, our culture, and things like that. Your socioeconomic class, lower middle class, upper middle class, those types of things. Your gender, which is also socially constructed and not real. Your sexual orientation, which is different from gender. Your age, your nationality, so you are American or not. Your first language, your physical, emotional, developmental ability, your religion or spiritual affiliation. So each one of us identifies with some aspect of that. Like we could name it. Which ones do you think about the most often? Which ones do you think about the least often? Sometimes we don't know ourselves, right? So I just said gender is socially constructed. Some of you might be like, what? So that might be something that you might want to learn more about, how gender and sexual orientation are different. Gender and sex are different. Identities that have the strongest effect on how you see yourself as a person. Take 5 minutes to think about each of those 4 statements, and somewhere within there, write a couple, maybe one, on how you resonate with each of the statements. So if number 1 is race, write that. If it's race and something else, write that. 5 minutes. From their own cultural ways, they also can do that, and I'm not going to undervalue their knowledge, skills, and gifts that they bring to the classroom. You're going to get this whole thing. So, what I want you to do now, again, so like we explore, we discover, we lean into our own selves. I want you to identify 5 objects that are symbolic of your culture. Now, I'm not going to tell you what your culture is, whatever you think your culture is. But you might want to go back to the identity wheel because culture is a lot of things, right? What are 5 objects that are symbolic of your culture? Come on, artists, come on, UPAD staff, working hard. I expect yours to be the best.